Here is a question that most physicians will never ask you at your annual checkup, and yet the answer to it may be one of the most accurate predictors of how long you will live and how independently you will live it. Can you stand up from a sitting position without using your hands? That's it. No blood draw, no imaging, no expensive panel, just that one movement. A landmark study published in the European Journal of Preventive Cardiology followed over 2,000 adults between the ages of 51 and 80 for more than a decade. The researchers scored each participant on their ability to sit down and stand up from the floor without support. Those who scored lowest, who needed their hands, their knees, or an external surface to complete the movement, had a mortality risk more than 5 times higher than those who scored in the highest range. 5 times. Yes, that is correct, 5 times. Not modestly elevated, not slightly concerning. 5 times more likely to die within the study period, from all causes. Now, I want to be precise here, because this is where the science becomes genuinely important rather than merely alarming. The test is not magic. What it measures is a composite of 4 biological qualities that decline silently and simultaneously with age: muscular strength, neuromuscular coordination, dynamic balance, and, crucially, the metabolic health of the tissues that supply your legs with oxygen and fuel. When those 4 things begin to erode together, the body does not send a dramatic warning signal. There is no alarm. There is only a subtle accumulation of limitation, a moment of hesitation on a staircase, a hand reaching for the railing when it didn't used to, a reluctance to walk distances that once felt effortless. My name is Marcus, and I have spent the last 18 years researching the intersection of aging biology, sarcopenia, the clinical term for age-related muscle loss, and what the scientific literature reveals about reversing, or at least dramatically slowing, that decline. Today I am going to walk you through 5 specific, evidence-supported movements that address the root mechanisms of leg deterioration in adults over 60. Not surface-level stretches, not passive movements, but targeted interventions that, when practiced consistently, directly engage the molecular pathways responsible for muscle preservation, circulatory efficiency, and neurological balance control, and I'll explain precisely why each one works. The sit-to-stand movement is, in the most literal sense, a daily measurement of functional independence. What most people do not understand is that the difficulty of rising from a chair is not purely a question of muscle strength. It is primarily a question of neuromuscular recruitment. Whether the motor cortex can rapidly and fully activate the large fast-twitch fibers in the quadriceps and gluteus maximus under load. Research published in the Journal of Gerontology has demonstrated that adults over 65 exhibit measurably slower motor unit recruitment rates compared to younger adults, even when raw muscle mass is comparable. The signal degrades before the tissue does. This means that practicing the sit-to-stand is not simply exercise for the legs. It is a neurological rehearsal. Every controlled repetition re-strengthens the communication pathway between the brain and the lower limb musculature. The protocol: sit at the front edge of a firm chair, feet flat and shoulder width apart, back upright. Lean the torso slightly forward. This anterior shift is not a compensation. It is a mechanical requirement that pre-activates the hip extensors. Press through the heels and stand slowly. Pause at the top with weight balanced, then lower yourself with full control. The eccentric phase, the lowering, is where the majority of strength adaptation occurs. Do not drop, resist the chair. Begin with 8 repetitions, 2 sets, once or twice daily. The target, over 6 to 8 weeks, is to complete the movement entirely without using the hands. I want to explain something about the circulatory anatomy of the leg that is rarely communicated clearly outside of a vascular medicine context. The veins in the lower extremities are working against gravity every moment you are upright. Unlike arteries, which receive pressure from the heart's contraction, the venous system depends on a different engine entirely: skeletal muscle, specifically the gastrocnemius and soleus muscles of the calf. When these muscles contract, they compress the deep venous plexus and propel blood proximally toward the heart. This is what physiologists call the musculovenous pump, and it accounts for approximately 40% of resting venous return from the lower limbs. When those muscles weaken, as they do with reduced walking and prolonged sitting, the pump fails, blood pools, pressure builds in the venous walls. Capillary filtration exceeds reabsorption. This is the molecular origin of the ankle swelling, lower leg fatigue, and cold feet that many older adults accept as simply part of aging. They are not. They are signs of a pump that has slowed. The calf raise, performed with deliberate control, directly rehabilitates this mechanism. The protocol: stand behind a sturdy surface with feet hip-width apart. Rise slowly onto the balls of the feet over a count of 2 seconds. Hold for 2 seconds at the peak of contraction. Lower over 3 seconds. The slow descent is what generates maximal venous compression. 10 repetitions, 2 sets. The goal is not height. The goal is full, deliberate contraction and release with every repetition. Among the structural changes that occur in sedentary aging adults, one of the most underappreciated is the progressive inhibition of the iliopsoas, the primary hip flexor complex. Extended periods of sitting place the iliopsoas in a shortened, passively slack position. Over time, the central nervous system begins to downregulate its activation threshold, a phenomenon neuroscientists call adaptive inhibition. The hip flexors do not simply weaken, they become neurologically quiet. The consequence of this, when left unaddressed, is a shortened stride length, reduced walking speed, and, perhaps most significantly, a diminished ability to clear the foot adequately during the swing phase of gait. This is one of the primary reasons that older adults catch their foot on a threshold or an uneven surface. The foot does not rise quite high enough because the hip flexors do not fire quite fully enough. The seated march directly reverses this inhibition without requiring any standing balance or joint loading. The protocol: sit upright at the front edge of a firm chair, spine neutral, feet flat on the floor. Slowly lift one knee toward the chest, pausing at the top for 1 second to ensure full iliopsoas engagement. Lower with control. Alternate legs in a steady rhythm. The pace is deliberate, not a fast pumping action, but a slow, intentional activation. Begin with 30 seconds of continuous movement, 2 repetitions. Work towards 60 to 90 seconds as the hip flexors regain responsiveness over several weeks. If what I am sharing today is genuinely useful to you, if this is the kind of evidence-based perspective on aging that you have been searching for, then I want to encourage you to subscribe to the Eternal Vigor Way and turn on notifications. Every week, I publish research-driven content built around one central belief: that the body retains a remarkable capacity for renewal at every age, and that the science now exists to help us act on that belief intelligently. This is the kind of knowledge that used to require a specialist's appointment. It belongs here, available to you, for free. Subscribe now so you never miss it. Falls are not random events. They are, in the overwhelming majority of cases, the predictable endpoint of a long, silent deterioration in what neuroscientists call proprioception, the body's ability to sense its own position in space and correct for perturbations before they become falls. Proprioceptive signals originate from mechanoreceptors embedded in the joint capsules, tendons, and muscle spindles of the lower limb, particularly the ankle complex. As adults age, the density and sensitivity of these receptors declines, and the speed at which the central nervous system processes and acts on their signals slows. Research published in the journal Age and Aging has documented that proprioceptive acuity decreases by as much as 50% between the 4th and 8th decades of life. The consequence is that small, unexpected shifts in the center of gravity, stepping off a curb, walking on uneven ground, turning quickly, can exceed the body's corrective capacity before it has time to respond. The fall that follows is not a failure of strength, it is a failure of information processing speed. The heel-to-toe balance walk directly trains the proprioceptive pathway under controlled challenge. By narrowing the base of support, it forces the ankle stabilizers, the tibialis anterior and the peroneal group, to continuously engage and recalibrate. It also provides the cerebellum with repeated corrective practice, the neurological equivalent of rehearsal. The protocol: stand near a wall or countertop for safety, place one foot directly in front of the other so the heel of the front foot touches the toes of the rear foot. Eyes forward, do not look down. Shift weight onto the front foot and bring the rear foot forward, placing heel to toe. Take 10 deliberate steps. Turn and return. Perform 2 to 3 passes per session. The key variable is not speed, it is the quality of each foot placement and the conscious engagement of the ankle stabilizers with every transfer of weight. The quadriceps femoris, the foremuscle group that spans the front of the thigh, is the primary structural support for the knee joint. When quadriceps strength declines, the knee's passive stabilizers, the cartilage, the meniscus, the collateral ligaments, begin absorbing forces they were never designed to manage in isolation. This is the mechanical origin of the knee discomfort that becomes so prevalent after age 60. It is not, in most cases, purely a cartilage problem. It is, at its root, a muscle insufficiency problem. A study published in Arthritis and Rheumatology found that adults with lower quadriceps strength had a significantly higher risk of symptomatic knee osteoarthritis progression over a 4-year period, independent of body weight and prior injury history. Strengthening the quadriceps does not simply improve comfort. It changes the mechanical load distribution across the joint. The wall squat is uniquely valuable because the wall support eliminates the forward shear stress on the patellar tendon that makes free squats painful for many older adults, while still generating substantial quadriceps tension through the isometric hold. The protocol: stand with the back flat against a smooth wall, feet 12 to 18 inches from the baseboard, shoulder width apart, toes pointing straight ahead. Slowly slide down the wall until the knees are bent at approximately 30 to 45 degrees. Not a deep squat, a shallow one. Hold for 10 seconds. Keep the back flat against the wall throughout and breathe naturally. Press through the heels to rise. Begin with 5 repetitions, 3 to 4 days per week. Over 6 weeks, progress toward holds of 20 to 30 seconds as the quadriceps endurance develops. 5 movements, each one targeting a specific biological mechanism: motor unit recruitment, venous return, hip flexor activation, proprioceptive retraining, and quadriceps endurance. None of them require equipment. None require leaving the home. What they do require is consistency and an understanding of why they work. Because when you understand the mechanism, the motivation shifts from discipline to conviction. The research is unambiguous on one point. Leg strength is not a cosmetic concern. It is not a fitness vanity metric. In the longitudinal data, lower limb strength and balance function are among the most powerful independent predictors of all-cause mortality, hospitalization risk, and the preservation of autonomy in the decade between 65 and 75. The choices made in that decade, and in the years preceding it, shape the biology of what comes after. The body you are living in right now is not finished adapting. That is not optimism. That is molecular biology. Skeletal muscle tissue retains the capacity for hypertrophic response to mechanical loading well into the 8th decade of life. The proprioceptive system rewires with practice. The venous pump reactivates with use. The question is simply whether we give these systems the signal they need. Before I close, if you have found this research valuable, if this is the level of depth and scientific honesty you want more of, please take a moment to subscribe to the Eternal Vigor Way. Every video I produce is built around the same standard: real mechanisms, real research, and practical protocols that you can act on today. You deserve more than vague health advice. Subscribe, and let's continue this work together. Thank you for your time today. These 5 exercises are a foundation, not a ceiling. Begin with 1. Practice it until it becomes habitual. Then add the next. Small, consistent, mechanically sound movement, repeated over months and years, is what the science shows actually works. The body is listening. Give it the right signal.